We're making homemade chicken soup today. We begin by sauteing freshly chopped okra. Okra does release kind of like a slimy substrate, but once the okra is cooked, the slime disappears and it has such an awesome flavor. We love it. Okay, now if you can take a look at your okra, you will see for the most part, you don't really see that slimy substrate anymore. It's kind of cooked through. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to remove this from the pan. It's ready to be introduced into our stew, our soup. One thing that I wanted to add is you have to kind of move this okra around because it will burn. And you may need to introduce a little bit of oil at a time as it kind of gets that substrate really browns in your pot. So we're actually, going to have to take this out and remove some of that before we begin sauteing our other herbs. But our okra is good to go. All right, our okra is all done. So now we're really ready to get this soup started. What I'm going to do is start with like one large chopped onion. Here we have our celery. And even the leaves, they have tremendous flavor. So you want to get all of that into the pan. Get that working up. And for my soup, I like to chop my vegetables a little bit more coarsely so that, when people are taking a spoon of soup, there's something on that spoon, something for them to chomp on, to chew. So just get this kind of cooked through slightly. And what we're going to do is we try to layer our flavor. So after every little few ingredients, you want to put a little bit of salt in there, a sprinkle of salt or whatever seasoning. If you're using the stash, you want to layer the vegetables with that seasoning mix. And to our sauteing coarsely chopped vegetables, we want to go ahead and add our tomatoes, our other vegetable. And these aren't fresh, but I love it because they have tremendous flavor. Of course, if you don't want to use the canned stewed tomatoes, you can simply chop up your own. But again, we're layering our flavors and we're building our base. We're building our broth to our soup. So we're going to get this worked through as well. Now I'm going to add my minced garlic. I didn't have bulbs on hand, which are great, but I'm going to go ahead and add my minced garlic in here. And to this, we can go ahead and reintroduce our okra. Okay, we've reintroduced our okra. So we've got our tomatoes simmering down, our onions, our celery. So we're really getting a very good base here for our soup. We're getting ready to introduce our liquid component. So that's coming up next. Okay, so now we're about ready to add our liquid component. I was just lucky enough to have some chicken broth on hand. But I don't have a whole lot, but I'm going to go ahead and add this in here. But I always try to keep some bouillon on hand, whether that's vegetable bouillon or chicken bouillon. And we're going to use our filtered water. That's going to help to add tremendous flavor to this soup. So I'll go ahead and introduce all of this chicken broth here. All of those flavors are just cooking down in there. All of those nutrients from our vegetables. Remember, we're nursing mom back to health. We call her Mema. We're nursing Mema back to health. And so we want to have our fresh vegetables giving us good nutrients. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce some water as well. We need a lot of broth for this yummy chicken soup. All right, so we're coming right along. We're brewing nicely. I'm gonna add another layer of flavor to this. Remember, we flavor in layers. So I'm gonna add, I told you about our bouillon. That's gonna give us tremendous flavor. I've already put 1 cube in. We're gonna go ahead and put another one in. I'm also gonna add some bay leaves and some thyme. All right, we're continuing to add flavor. I've been sprinkling salt. We've introduced our thyme and our bay leaf in there. And now it's time for the star of attraction, our chicken. Now you can do this either of two ways. You can kind of parboil your wings and use that kind of to make your broth. I kind of was just on a whim and I didn't do it that way this time. So we're going to go ahead and introduce our wings into the broth that we've kind of already created. Again, we've seasoned this. It's had time to sit and marinate. The chicken has been cleaned, and so it's ready kind of to build on and accept even some of the flavors that we have already introduced into our stew. And you know, this is a recipe that takes time. So I'm doing this on a Sunday night, and you know, you can gently let everything kind of simmer down. And I mean, the house just smells amazing, and it's really made with love. So now that our chicken wings have been introduced, you want to go ahead and leave this to medium low simmer for at least about 40 minutes. We want our chicken to cook through. And then we're going to begin to add our root vegetables after the chicken's done, to even add some more layers of flavor to our stew. Okay, through the magic of technology, you can see that we are bubbling along nicely. And as our tomatoes cook down, they give us tremendous flavor and color to our broth. We see somewhat our vegetables, while still coarse, they're a little bit smaller, but still a good bite-sized portion. And so you kind of want to introduce the ingredients in terms of how much time they're going to take to cook through. So our chicken is at a pretty good place, has a little bit more to go, but we're going to go ahead and introduce some of our root vegetables. You know, if you want white potatoes or red potatoes, or you know, pumpkin or some other starch, as I've chosen this time, this would really be the time to introduce them. So we're going to go ahead and put some of our yam, as we call it, and our pumpkin in the soup. And allow those to cook through. Okay, our chicken has come along nicely. As you see with our broth, the potatoes have cooked through. They've released some of their color and essence. So we have some delicious flavors. I mean, again, the house smells amazing. The broth is delicious. And so we're going to add our root vegetables now, as they'll take some time to cook through. So we have our pumpkin and we have our 𝐦𝐤𝐤𝐵𝐵𝐿𝐼, which is just like a sweet potato, and a white sweet potato, and we're gonna let those cook through anywhere from, I don't know, 5 minutes or so. So we're gonna let that work. Okay, we are progressing. It is late, but we're finishing up with our soup here. We're now going to introduce some fresh corn. And as you see, it's getting tight in here. We've got a lot of things in here. So you want to make sure you start with a big enough pot so that you'll be able to accommodate all of the meat, all of the vegetables, all of the broth. So initially when you introduce things, you know, it'll displace the fluid and it'll be kind of high, but slowly but surely everything will cook down. Each layer will cook down. So this is our next to last layer. This is our sweet corn. We're gonna again let that cook through, and then we'll end up with some fresh cabbage in our chicken soup, and then we will be done. All right, this is our soup bubbling along. Everything is just glistening. Everything just looks so savory and succulent. And we're really going to push the envelope, test the laws of physics here. We're going to introduce our cabbage a little bit at a time. As I told you, things have kind of settled up here, but there's a lot of broth. There's a lot of space in the bottom. And so we're going to introduce this, let this kind of wilt down and go to the bottom. So here's our cabbage. We introduce a little at a time. And we'll come back. Okay, so we've introduced the last bit of our cabbage, and we are tip to the brim, but we are essentially done. As you can't see, but I have my power down to basically a low simmer, a 2.5 to 3. And we're just gonna let this simmer for a few more minutes, and then we're gonna turn it off. Now, I prepared this advanced. We won't eat this for another day. So imagine, the pot will cool. It'll take a couple of hours to cool, and then we'll refrigerate it. And all of those flavors will have even more time to infuse. So by the time we warm this again tomorrow, it will be absolutely delicious. All of the flavors will be perfectly melded through, and it will be just delicious. So this is our family recipe for chicken soup, give or take different vegetables depending on the season, depending on the preference. I hope you've enjoyed this demonstration, and I hope you've felt the love and care in which this recipe was prepared. So we want you to join us on our other videos, whether it be cooking or trips or whatever. We want you to rate, comment, and subscribe, and take care, and God bless. Bye-bye.